Hey guys, what's up?
I thought that people would not care that we have not been doing this. I was wrong, because there have been comments of people
Yeah,
asking where the latest episode has been. So I'm pleasantly surprised, Evan.
me too. Like all six of you out there, whomever, I certainly appreciate it. I got one note here from a viewer. She sometimes messages me on Instagram. She liked the Astronomy Minute. That she was the one who talked about the Astronomy Minute way back when we first started. But we've been busy, man, between family stuff, crazy weather stuff. But we're still here. We're still sort of wise, and still two guys talking weather.
That's right. Not much has changed with that. It's summertime, Memorial Day weekend. The weather was actually terrible here. It has rained the last 5 days here in Kansas City. It hasn't rained a bunch, but the evaporation rate's been super low, and it's been gloomy that people haven't really been able to enjoy much time outside.
Of course. We've had record rain for the month of May in three different towns in central Alabama. Some of the records going back to 1895, and we've effectively ended any lingering drought from last fall. So Memorial Day, believe it or not, though, they have this big national cemetery that's a little south of here. They do all this tribute to the fallen soldiers and military servicemen and women, and they actually, like, the sun came out. It was really really surreal to see because it was good weather, and then that night it was severe thunderstorms, torrential rain, so it held off just enough here.
Good. That is nice. It's nice when the clouds open up and perfect timing for everything. And
Not
we
mad at the weather,
finally
man.
got some sunshine. We finally got some sunshine here. But of course, there's more storms coming tonight to dampen things back up.
Anything severe?
No, probably nothing severe. And we are maybe a week away before our next episode of severe weather. Should be should be good. Should be really nice. It'll be pushing 90, I think, later on this week. And then, of course, bam. After that, cold front comes through, we get some strong to severe thunderstorms as it happens. So we're like transitioning, I think, out of the tornado season, which has really not been that bad for my part of Missouri and Kansas, as opposed to other parts of Missouri as well. You guys have been out of the tornado season.
Yeah, we had a couple rogue tornadoes though. So last Tuesday we were on the air, me and James, for a couple hours, and we had an EF1 roll through, and I got to grab the photo of it, Wes. But we had, I don't know if you saw, I sent you a picture of Huntsville, um, the tornado that came through the EF2, I believe it was, that went right through Madison County, Alabama, and was right outside, a major metropolitan area in the middle of, like, rush hour. Surreal seeing a visual, because down here in the southeast, like, in your time up there in Kansas City, I don't know how many you've seen, but they're very nice. They can be picturesque in the middle of the country. Here, the rain rat, and this one was like very visible, which was just shocking to see. I'll grab it and I'll share it here in a second.
I usually, don't cover other cities' weather during my weathercasts unless it is like something significant happening in a decently sized town. And so I covered, probably for a good 30 minutes or an hour, the tornado that was going into Huntsville. And I was like, hey, this isn't a tornado emergency, but like there is 100% a tornado coming into Huntsville right now. So if you have friends and family that live down there, you need to let them know something bad is about to happen. Then like 5 minutes later, it went emergency. I was like, thank
Yeah,
goodness.
and I'm glad you did. And I will say this for everybody who messaged that, who said something about it. We appreciate, like, meteorologist people. I have friends I graduated high school with that live up there, and they didn't know. I mean, most people, like me and you, are glued to weather. Like, it's what we do, it's our job, and we have a fascination with it. But there's a lot of people who just don't. They don't follow it on a day to day basis. So for people who were able to be notified and knew that this was coming, is awesome. And there's more pictures like this, that have been shared too, but this is the one I had most readily, and that is, the funnel, that is the tornado down. And some of the damage was interesting because there was a neighborhood, and like the side of this house is gone. Across the street, they have like a little plastic play set, like something that we have, and it was just there. It was just sitting in the front yard, like it wasn't moved. I mean, I could pick it up and probably, toss it, move it to the side. So one house on the same street loses like a section of the second floor, and a house across the street doesn't have its playground equipment moved. I mean, it's tornadoes are so. I mean, explain that. It's crazy.
This picture like trips me out. For some reason, it looks like that is like the tornado is like horizontal rather than vertical. So like, can you point out with the cursor like where the tornado is at in this picture?
Let me see if it'll. Yeah. So here's the. I didn't open this with paint. Dang it. Okay. So here's one side of the funnel. There's the V right there. And then here you can kind of see the debris right above the roof of this house. That is the debris scattering. So when I texted this to you and you were like, it's tripping me out. You look at certain things, and once you see it a certain angle, you can't unsee it. But does it make sense now? Can you see it now?
Yeah, I think like I see the funnel for sure, but for whatever reason, I'm stuck in this horizontal. So I'm just going to take your word for it that is
Okay.
legitimate. The tornado on the ground right there.
I'm gonna find a. I'm gonna hold on. I'll be right back with you. But it 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 was there were some better ones than that. But you could just see the whole thing, which was nuts. We just can't usually see them like that down here, and we certainly did. So been a busy week. Had some cool pictures too. Should we start there, Wes? Or do you want to do your hail stuff?
No. You go first. I got to reposition myself in this house real quick.
Okay, you do that. I'm gonna go ahead and share these pictures and just kind of talk over what we've got here. Um, well, how about this? Start here because this is interesting. So for everybody who's out there and follows like your rain. So I love if I can time out fertilizing my lawn when I know it's gonna rain. I like it's perfect because I don't have to worry about running the sprinklers. I don't have to do any extra work. But my neighbors know, so I'll like go out there and I got I got my little spreader, my Scott spreader, and I'm going, back and forth. And they're like, "Is it gonna rain?" I said, "Oh yeah." I said, "I'm knocking this out." But we've had so much rain in the month of May that there's a couple places that are pushing records, and a few places that have broken records. So I'm going to pull up this graphic here, and it has been one of those interesting setups here. So this is a look at rainfall totals since May 1st. Okay, Fayette, you see that 14 inches right there? Remember
I
that?
don't. I don't think you're sharing the screen.
I'm not.
No.
Oh yeah. Hold on a minute. I promise we're not
I've
completely.
repositioned.
All right.
We've we've been like in this soggy pattern as well, and yeah. So fertilizing, putting seed down, everything. This has been like a perfect time to do it.
Oh yeah, I love. And Lauren's like, what do you, she'll get irritated with me sometimes because I'm like, I need 10 minutes. She's like, for what? And I said, I got to. She was like, you already cut the grass. I said, no. There's cutting the grass. There's edging. There's weed whacking. There's fertilizing. There's throwing down nitrogen. There's a whole thing. Okay,
Blowing
just mowing. Let me have it. Okay, but look at these totals, Wes. This
three.
is so this actually is not including today or yesterday afternoon because I recorded this yesterday, but this is a look at, and this is very hyper local. I understand that, but for our Birmingham viewers here, this is a look at the all-time May rank, and
Oh my gosh.
Fayette, yeah, all these places. Tuscaloosa and Bology that you're seeing there are both sit on the Warrior River, and so the Warrior River is a big thoroughfare, in the Alabama waterways, and it is way, way, way up. Not at flood stage because this has all been fairly spread out, but I mean, the numbers are insane. And some of these, there's probably records too. There's not historical data at some of these places. There's
Hmm.
sensors, ASOS stations, co-ops that have only been there for a handful of years. And the point is, this is one of the wettest Mays we've had since like 2003.
Gosh, 14 inches.
14 inches.
That's a lot. Also, the
Um,
Warrior River is a heck of a river name. I mean, if you're rafting down that thing, that is
oh yeah.
awesome to hear.
Oh, it's depending on where you're at, it's the Warrior River, it's the Black Warrior River. It comes down from the north, and I think it's maybe a break off of the Tennessee River, and eventually it hits the Alabama River down south. But it's a big water source in the western half of the state. So Warrior
We
River.
so the ironic thing about what's been going on here is that we've had rain for 5 days, but we've it hasn't really amounted to much. And this was very great timing for me personally because I was just in Oregon for 5 days, where like it's drizzly, rainy, many days out of the year, but like the amount that it rains and the rain gauge is actually not a ton, but everything
Interesting.
stays really soggy. And so the ground or rather, it stays really soggy because there's not a whole lot of sunshine. Today is like the first like partly cloudy day we've had in like 6 or 7 days here in Kansas City. So this has been a great time to put down the fertilizer, a grass seed, and everything like that here in Kansas City. I think we have had like 3/4 of an inch of rainfall over the last 6 days, but
That
it
is
hasn't
so
felt like that.
interesting what you just said about Oregon, because so I guess there's two ways you could look at it. What is the wettest city in the country? I would guess like somewhere in Washington or Oregon. But based off what you said, maybe they don't get the most rain each year, but maybe they have the most like cloudy days or most days with at least trace precipitation.
Yeah, I think we probably had this discussion in a previous podcast where it's like the wettest cities by quantity of rain is like
Yeah,
somewhere in the tropics. But the rainiest days by like number of days with trace is somewhere in the Pacific Northwest.
that's right. We did talk about that. I think one of the first ones because I was a bit surprised. And you go to Florida or somewhere on the coast, those sea breeze storms, you get dumped on like an inch, but it'll be 30 minutes, and then it's sunny
Yeah,
versus just kind of sprinkling
evaporates.
all day.
Yeah, and then like it evaporates and everything is nice and green and happy
Yeah.
and there. What has also happened over the when did this happen? This was like this. I posted this on May 26th, so I think it was like Sunday or something. Was a near state record size hail that
Oh,
happened in Texas. Um, so here's my little contribution here for this part of the podcast. It was from what is his name? I gave him credit and everything like that. It was part of Atmospheric Chaos. Colin, where you at, buddy? I forget. I'm sorry. Atmospheric Chaos. That's what he wanted to be
okay.
credited as.
I saw this, and I think what was funny is it may have been the other picture you sent me, or one that I saw on social, and it was yeah, he's that one, yeah, and he's showing the OU hat, and I'm like, dang, like I've never seen a hailstone that size, never.
The Texas state record I think is like 6.5 ish inches for the hail. This was 5.9. And so I mean top five hailers for sure in Texas, but that is at least a grapefruit size. You can like call it small watermelon maybe size hail.
Yeah, is cantaloupe? Does that fit in between?
Yeah,
Kind of thinking
yeah, because
cantaloupe.
he doesn't really seem like a small fellow, and so you can if it's pretty big in his hands,
It's
probably
that's
probably pretty
nuts.
big.
I mean, not to be like gruesome. Could you imagine getting like hit by that? The velocity that's headed to the surface? Like, what the heck?
Oh yeah, you're at least knocked out. I don't know what else bad could happen. Like I hopefully this was just like an anomalous
I hope
hailstone
so.
for that storm, and it wasn't like a shower that did that.
Like so the way hail works, and we don't have it very often down here west, so you might be better explaining this, but the hail cores, you got to have this almost dry layer in the atmosphere where the rain can, it can coalesce, it can freeze, and then these hailstones in the updrafts, they go up and down, they bounce around, and they call coalesce. You get these rings in there as more water freezes and it grows. We don't typically get big hail here because our profile is saturated, being close to the Gulf. But to get something that size, I would just love to see the process and how it looked up there with the other hailstones before it fell.
So I've been doing a little bit of research over the last year, and by research I mean like looking at other people's research. I'm not out here collecting hailstone by any stretch of the imagination. Um,
It's a little basket.
eh, a few like really interesting things have come up in this research. One, you do need actually a decent amount of moisture, rather lots of moisture to get hail. So, like from a moisture perspective, the southeast is actually in a good setup to get hail. But the problem is it's not cold enough, close enough to the surface to get that hail to form. Something else that I've come across is that the hail growth region is above us between -10 and -30 degrees Celsius. Typically, or whenever you're looking for storms, Evan, and you're like forecasting hail, what are you looking for? What are the things that you're looking for?
Honestly, I look for cold air aloft, and if we're going to have any amount of, I guess, big steep lapse rate, so that mid level, and that kind of goes with the cold air aloft. So if I see like the upper air map, and I see an anomaly with colder air that gets here, kind of like height falls, I'll look for that, and then the instability that comes with it, and then hopefully not a fully saturated sounding was what I would look for. But sounds like I may have missed something.
No, I think like that overall is pretty good. One thing that I found really interesting, probably like the most interesting part of this research, was that you can have too much cape and too strong of an updraft, and the hail cannot grow. And so if your updraft is so strong, it can actually shoot the hailstones out of this region of -10 to -30, and it falls out of the storm without having the chance to grow further. And so
Wow.
it wouldn't necessarily be that the hail gets too big and it falls. It literally just gets shot so far away that it's shot to a spot where the updraft no longer exists. And then it falls down.
Do they have, and this I mean, obviously you've been kind of just looking into this, but is there a critical cape value that they've, research has shown, like, hey, when you have this much, it's too much, or is it like multiple factors?
It's multiple factors, and you brought up a good point with the dry air. There has to be some sort of a little bit of dry air in there, but too much dry air messes up the hail formation overall. And so there's this parameter that they're working on making publicly available called E cape or entrainment cape, and it's a balance between dry air, moisture, and the amount of cape available once you get above I think it's above the LFC, the level of free convection. And so if you have enough cape above that level, we're getting super scientific here. But essentially, once you get above where the clouds have formed, which is a lift and condensation level, once you get like above that, then the amount of cape there is really important for getting the hail to form. And so you can actually have too much cape and the hail is smaller.
Yeah, to put this into simpler terms, because so I was at a preschool this morning and I was at a middle school the other day. So the LCL, it's a fancy term for, that's where the cloud forms, all right? Your water process, water cycle, your evaporation. Yep, there you go. There's the LCL. Sometimes pilots refer to that as the ceiling, where the cloud base forms for, when pilots take off. LFC, free convection, that's the critical point where once the parcel or section of air gets there, it can freely go vertically anywhere in the atmosphere. And you look up in the summertime, you see these towering cumulonimbus clouds. It's because once this parcel gets to that critical point, everywhere above it is cooler, so that warm air just keeps going. And that's the area of growth we're looking at. So when you're looking at a thunderstorm and you see how high it gets, that growth within that part of the cloud, we're talking about that vertical motion within there and its intensity when we talk about that cape or that energy.
Bringing up LFC in a school talk is quite impressive, Evan. That is
I
high
love
level stuff.
you will never feel more challenged in your weather knowledge than when you get asked scientific questions by really young kids, because they ask it so plainly and you're like, how do I explain this complex process in a simple way? And so a lot of time I bring a Dr. Seuss book with me first. We read that and then we kind of go into depending on the age, into like how it works. But in layman's terms, that's kind of how it works. But the too much cape is interesting because I have this visual now of this big, like supercell type discrete, or it could be in a line, whatever, thunderstorm, and hailstones just going up and shooting out of the out of the top before they can grow in size. Then as they fall, it might be pea-sized hail. It might be coming, the forward flank, downdraft that you get out in front of the storm, and maybe that could contribute to some of the smaller hail you see. But that's really cool stuff.
So a couple other things that I found were interesting. Once a supercell begins to produce a tornado, it likely is no longer producing large hail. It can still produce hail, but the shear involved to produce a tornado is kind of more used up in the tornado formation and the maintenance of it, rather than hail in the first place.
Huh. As a kid, I remember always thinking, and this has been proven to be not true. And when you saw hail, that a tornado was coming. So that was like one of those things. And I was in elementary school, and I may have watched the Weather Channel or seen it somewhere, misinterpreted it, but it was like hail is a sign that a tornado could be right behind it. So I always thought, uh-oh, there's hail. Where's the tornado?
Mm-hmm.
But that's not always the case. You'll sometimes have a hail core. But like, so can a storm have the hail and then stop producing when it pivots to tornado? Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, that's what the research has shown.
That's fascinating.
It's crazy, yeah, and which makes sense because usually when you're doing tornado coverage, like your concern obviously isn't so much about the hail it's producing, but it also usually isn't producing huge hail that is a concern either. That's just
Yeah.
what clicked in my head too. I was like, oh yeah, I'm never saying like baseball size hail with this tornado.
We'll use, a lot of times I'll use, so the DBZ value, of course, that's the, when I tell people when we're in coverage, you look at the map and people are always like, oh, the red is the scariest part. So not necessarily. You want to look at what the shape is because that's more telling. But when you start to see the pinks, that can be scary because that's the radar hitting something and it's pinging back a value to us that gets put into a color. And when you see pinks like we had recently, it's usually a hail core, and there's always a ton of lightning right with that core. I don't know if any of the research has shown you that, but a lot of times I'll look at lightning and kind of correlate that with either a small hail core or storm intensification.
I think that's really good. That's a really good idea because lightning is ice particles hitting each other, discharging, and so yeah, those two definitely go hand in hand.
So interesting things you just put together watching weather. I'm gonna have to look for that because you're right. When we're looking at tornadoes, like I'll sometimes look and see, okay, there's that supercell where that hail core could be, but your focus is on the hook and where the rotation is, and that'll be something to watch. You sometimes you don't see this stuff until you're told to look for it, and then you're watching it in real time.
Yeah, we kind of have other things that we're concerned about when we're doing tornado coverage.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're doing it with two or three people, sometimes one person is in charge of the tornado, the track of it. The other person is like, all right, what other hazards come with this? And I've been on both sides of that, and I'm never like baseball size hail. So
Yeah, I don't remember the
no.
last time we had baseball. I think golf ball might be the biggest we've had here in Alabama since I've been in Birmingham. When I was in Dothan, I don't know, this might be something else to look into, Wes, is that
Mhm.
marine layer, and maybe it has to do with the temperatures, but we almost never got hail bigger than pea-sized in Dothan. And Dothan was 70 miles from the coast. So the Gulf of Mexico, or Gulf of America, excuse me, is I mean, very close in proximity. This is not a political thing, but I just
The Gulf.
I call it the Gulf. That's what I say because
Yeah,
people get
yeah,
mad either
same.
way. But the I always blamed it on the atmospheric profile being too saturated because we also have tornadoes down there west that have really really low LCLs. So like the cloud base will be like 800 feet because it's so saturated. Your condensation level is just lower, and so it's a different setup, and we would never get big hail there. So most of my career tracking tornadoes, we've not been looking for widespread hail.
That makes sense. And when you think about it, Colorado, South Dakota, they have more hail, less moisture,
Colder air
temperatures.
loft.
So I think that tells us that the temperature is more important than the
Interesting.
amount of moisture.
And it all makes
Um,
sense. I mean, it's something you just connected the dots there, though. That's great. Hey,
Something other research I've been doing. This is not that hard. It's just um, counts of tornadoes. It's been very busy. It has calmed down a little bit over the last week, but this post that I put on my Facebook page, I'm at West Weather, by the way, generated a lot of buzz. People love to see how many tornadoes have occurred in their states. I had no idea. This was such a big deal.
that's a great
But
graphic.
people were calling me out like these numbers don't match the SPC. It wasn't a bunch of people, but it was a few of them. What I found out is the National Weather Service and the SPC don't even have the same amount of tornadoes in the database.
Yep.
So like
It is
trying
so
to
hard. If you look at, so I've done research too, Wes, and we've used on this show about Alabama tornadoes. And if you look at and I was getting so frustrated because the numbers weren't matching up. I know the folks at the National Weather Service. I know the Alabama tornado base pretty well, but the SPC numbers were different. So the numbers are not the same. The local offices can go in after the fact. Again, this is what I was told and what I've come to know true. They can come in after the fact and reassess something. We've said something that shows up as wind damage, and then they go and send a survey team, and boom, it's an EF1. So the numbers don't match up, but it's almost impossible to please and match all these numbers up.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is this source for this map is supposed to be coming from the SPC. You go to the SPC tornado reports by state, and it doesn't match up. But I thought this source, which by the way is from like Team Rubicon, which does a good job laying out the data, actually has the accurate number of tornadoes for my area. So I was like, okay, this is it. For whatever reason, the SPC is off, and I was just like, I can't explain this to everybody that doubts it, but like this is the most accurate one to me. And so with that in mind, Missouri, as of May 22nd, and I don't think this has really changed very much because the states which have had tornadoes since May 22nd have not been in the top three. Missouri leads Mississippi by one tornado. So Missouri's number one, Mississippi's number two, Illinois is number three, Texas at four, which you expect them to be on the top five like every single year because it's such a big state. Indiana is at five. Some of the more notable tornado alley states, Oklahoma's at 43, Nebraska at 40, Alabama is at 6 there. And the biggest thing that sticks out to me, Evan, is that the states that are in traditional tornado alley seem to have their tornado season happen maybe a little bit earlier this year as opposed to Dixie Hour or the southeastern stage. Like, I mean, Alabama is up there for sure at number 6, but y'all's tornado season, I think, was over before May 22nd.
So outside of this outlier on the 20th, 21st, we had 3 tornadoes, I believe, in the DMA, 6, I think, across the state. So I'll have to check that. We're up to, there's been, through April 6th, there was 43 confirmed tornadoes, I believe. The numbers have gone up, but they post at the end of each month. So we'll see at the end of May where we're at. But we had all of ours February. I did the numbers. It was like 29 in April, like 18 or so in March, and then, a handful like 11, 12 in February. That February, big one in March, and the first 6 days in April. And then it was quiet. Typically mid-late April's busy for us. We got into May and we were in that ridge pattern. We thought summertime was here, we were done. And then boom, the 20th hit and we had that set up with the tornadoes up in Huntsville. When we thought we were out of the woods, but that's an interesting conclusion to that. And I wouldn't have guessed Missouri, to be honest with you.
I wouldn't either until you take a look at where all the tornado warnings have been. And keep in mind, this is tornado warnings, not necessarily tornadoes themselves, but it is just like very telling. I mean, like the entire Mississippi River from St. Louis to Memphis is one giant tornado warning area.
Golly.
I mean, I feel bad. Like St. Louis, Memphis. I mean, no sleep for anyone there.
No. And a shout out for a lot of people is the more I go to schools and talk to people, they don't realize. So there's and a lot of light's been shed on it now with the cuts to NOAA and everything. But The National Weather Service, like the local forecast offices, are the people in charge of issuing these warnings. And whether you agree with the warnings or not, whether you believe there's a warranted storm or not, you have people in there working these crazy long shifts to give us information to pass on, and it is a hard job.
Yeah.
To you're looking at radar, you're trying to figure out, what do we need to tell the public? Is it severe? Is it tornado? And they got to make that call, and it's not easy. And that is a whole lot of warnings to issue, man.
Then when you compare this to what happened last year, there's actually, I think, about a 10 tornado count difference between this year and last year at this time. But when you just go between these two maps, it's tough to like reason that.
Yeah,
Partially because I think when you look in the middle of the country near Memphis, the difference between 2015 and 2024,
staggering.
yeah, is so stark. And so you're like, how is that, more or less? But again, these are just warnings. But there is a correlation between the amount of warnings and tornadoes that occurred. And the tornado warnings are in a different spot, where if you look at 2024, Iowa, Wisconsin, the upper Midwest has had more tornadoes as compared to this year, and Iowa has really seen a lot less activity.
Look at Florida too. I didn't see that one at first, but the different 2024, there's a handful more in Florida, especially the Panhandle. I don't know what event that was, but that's Tallahassee market and Mobile, and it's inundated versus 2025, completely different. There must have been some event there that had South Georgia and that I-10 corridor, but yeah, you're right. It's just displaced.
It's crazy. So
Man.
yeah, another busy tornado season. But both of our seasons the last couple of years have not been. No, actually, last year was terrible for me.
Last year was dead. It was the quietest. I went back to like the late 90s, West, and I think I had to go back to like 89, 91, somewhere in there before I gave up, because there's not data to go back and show, or that I could find, how many warnings were issued. There were 14 warnings issued in Birmingham, the Birmingham office, which is responsible for like 60% of the state. In 2024, we had, I don't even know, I had done a story on this, but it was like the least amount of tornadoes over a year as far back as I could find, which we knew wasn't going to last this year. And 43 confirmed so far this year. That number will probably jump 50s or 60s. But we definitely had a much more active year this year than previous. So
Starting to get back up there, and we'll see what the next, I would say, couple of months hold for our tornado count overall.
So this caused a bit of a stir the other day. So when you see this, Wes, and this is so me and Wes were texting the other day. And I said, "Oh, wait till you see this," and I said, "Wait for it," and I put ... and then I never responded to you. I went to see Mission Impossible with my wife, and I got sidetracked. So take a look at this, and what do you see? Like, what's your first thought when you see this?
It's like some sort of shelf cloud situation there. I guess I would lean more toward a shelf cloud than a wall cloud with this.
That's another view of it, which is when it's more on top. So this is at a distance. This is at a McDonald's in Livingston, Alabama, by the way.
I mean, I could see, especially for the untrained eye, being like, "Oh, that's a wall cloud." Yeah.
Yeah. So this was from I believe somebody with the EMA, and at the time they were debating putting a tornado warning on this, and I believe the office coming out of Mississippi, the Jackson office, had a tornado warning on this. But in this part of the state, you're in a dead zone. You have Columbus, which is by Mississippi State West. That's a radar. You have Birmingham's radar. And then you have the radar site that's in Jackson. There's a huge dead zone in East Mississippi and West Alabama. So it was hitting this storm really high, and it was showing good rotation. So the first time we got eyes on it was this. And this is what caused the National Weather Service in Birmingham to keep it a severe, not TOR, because there's rotation here. And I don't have rights to the video to show, but in the video, you can see the base slowly turning.
Mm.
So what we basically, when I was talking with James, what we concluded with this is there's elevated rotation here. There in the upper levels of the atmosphere, it showed that there was rotation, but it didn't translate low enough to get a rotating supercell. What it did do is it had a really strong downdraft, and you had about a brief window of 60 to 70 mile an hour winds with this before it fizzled out. But this was when I texted you. I said, "Dang these MCS tornadoes," because I was headed back to work Monday evening, Memorial Day. So I thought, here we go.
Uh,
There's an MCS moving into the state, and it's going to have a kink, and there's going to be a tornado. Now there wasn't. There was no tornadoes with this, but it just goes to show there are certain times of the year in certain setups. If you looked at the atmospheric profile, there was no shear. There was the actual instability profile wasn't great for strong updrafts, and there was no dynamic support. We're in this big, moist, subtropical environment, and so nothing you'd looked at would say tornadoes can happen. But the storm itself evolved, and it created almost its own rotation within it that for a second had us thinking we might have a tornado, and then that's all that amounted to it. But creepy stuff.
it's
So
like
I
a
just want to
it's
show
like
that.
a decaying mesocyclone.
Bingo, mesocyclone.
Yeah.
That was the word I couldn't come out of my mouth earlier. So you had your mesocyclone. It wasn't quite all together. Never formed a tornado, but you did have some strong. And what I'm guessing is right behind there, where you see it just kind of gray, like in this area. That is a wall of rain, and that's your downdraft,
Mm.
and that's where the strong winds were. And you'll get that, and then out in front of it, that cooler air will rise, condense, and cool, and you'll get that creepy shelf cloud look to it. That's my thought, anyways. But
Nice.
I love your
Yeah.
pictures.
Oh, you got
Um,
them? Okay, cool. This was actually not related directly to a storm. My cousin down in the Ozarks sent me this, and yeah, this just looks like a UFO in the sky. Um, and so the best that I can gather from this is that there was some sort of shear or elevated rotation. I don't like this isn't I don't think directly coming from a thunderstorm because I don't see any precipitation with it. I just think that somehow the shear in the lower parts of the atmosphere spun up this like disc shaped cloud, which the general public probably got a little afraid if you saw this. Like
this one
that,
even more. Look at it. Looks like it's like vacuuming up people like aliens.
yeah, like those trampolines are about to get vacuumed up. And that
Yeah.
kid on the bike, there was a kid on the bike. He got vacuumed up. Actually, that's why the bike is there. He went to explore the ship, and he's
I
gone
just
now.
I've never seen. So this one to me looks a little bit more. Now maybe the angle's different. Like maybe this one's catching it from the side, and this one's more beneath. I guess these are in similar areas. I'm not sure, but was wild. So I sent this to my boss, and he just said, "Wow." Um, did not necessarily have an answer for it,
Well,
but
I'm gonna tag him in the tweet that I'm gonna send out later today with those pictures and get some new followers from it.
yeah. I mean, I ask James because he's seen so much, and I will tell
Oh
you
yeah.
the one thing about the weather I've learned too is working in two markets that have a lot of farmers. Listen to the farmers, people who watch weather and it's part of their life. They see things that a lot of other people don't. And he's observed weather in Alabama for decades. So he sees some stuff and I'll be like, dude, what what is this? You know? And this was just I mean a crazy looking cloud. I thought at first when I looked at this one that okay, you said the Ozarks. Is there an elevation thing? Is this partial lenticular type cloud? But then I got no answer with this. I don't know.
The part of the Ozarks that this picture was taken is not mountainous enough
Okay.
to give off that lenticular because I'm with you on that. I was looking for a mountain to be like, where's this thing forming?
And
Yeah.
is this like a little tiny rain shaft in here? Like what's going on there?
I can't tell that. There's a little bit of sunlight trying to get, or the sun angle would have been super low at this point.
Oh, it's just the
That's
whole
weird.
thing's weird. So you have a theory, drop it in the comment below. That'd be great. Goodness gracious.
Here,
So I think
fun
oh
stuff.
yeah. This will kind of tease ahead to the next one. Um Okay, so the NOAA releases a hurricane forecast. I believe Colorado State also does. Wes, is there any other entities that issue an
Oh my
official?
gosh, who doesn't? There's so there. So in terms of like official entities, I think NOAA is it, and it comes down to like, um, who else do you trust, like personally or like because you mentioned Colorado State, and Colorado State is
Phil
a
Klotzbach, I
high.
believe, is a big. So he's number one. People, if you want to, if you're out there and you're still watching, Philip Klotzbach, follow him. He's one of the smartest people I've ever. I met him once. One of the
Oh,
smartest people I ever
really?
met. Yeah, he came to. It was one of the years I went back to symposium at State. I believe Greg Nordstrom introduced me to him. Jim Eds was supposed to be there too. He's a hurricane chaser and he does research. He literally goes and positions himself. Wes, I'm sure you know he does, but like people out there, he positions himself with like a GoPro or he has before, and he just watches the evolution of like a landfalling hurricane, the eye wall, the experience, the winds, the storm surge. It's nuts. But some of the smartest people in the world of tropical, and I think he's affiliated with Colorado State. So I see that as a official entity too, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. Like if you ever if you ever have any questions about what a storm is doing, it's a hurricane. What the storm is doing, it's historical context. Phil
Historical.
is like
Fun fact,
the
Phil.
the Bible, dude. He's like the Bible of hurricanes. It's insane.
Uh, he must have, if they're not digitized, he has to have a filing cabinet that is just monstrous. I mean, the amount of knowledge he has. So I don't think he'd come on our little teeny tiny chat here, but boy, if I ever had a chance to talk to him, love to.
Abs same. Hopefully we can get
So
our numbers up.
okay, so let's put some context to this. You wanna talk over? Wes texted me and he said we should come up with our own hurricane forecast. So
Well, I'll tell you why I said that.
okay, good, because I have a response to that.
Well, no, the pie charts are kind of nice. So there's a slightly better chance that we'll have an above normal season than near normal or below normal. Just simple as that. This is saying there's a 40% chance of it being not above normal. That's the simplest way to I get from this, Evan. You're in the hurricane zone more than I am, so I think you should be the one giving the
Okay, and this is
estimations.
absolutely no knock. The people at NOAA and HC, some of the smartest people in our business, okay? I just simply do not think until the season starts, you can accurately tell, and this graphic says it all to me. 60% above, 40% below. You're basically straddling a line where you're not committing hard one way or the other. I mean, last year you could argue it fell within the range because it's like, okay, well, we had that many named storms. To me, the hurricane season comes down to the landfall when we have them, because you can have 6 to 10 hurricanes. And a lot of times, what our viewers would do when we were in Dothan is they would see major hurricanes 3 to 5. They live on a Gulf Coast, hurricanes 6 to 10, and they think, that's going to be 6 to 10 that come. We had a year, and I don't remember what year it was. It was in the 2010s, that era, where there were, I think we got to 22 named storms, and most of them, because of the Bermuda High, were just sailing out in the Atlantic.
Mm-hmm.
Hugely above average season with well below average cost. So to me, this is like, okay, I could probably throw some numbers at a dartboard and come up with a number similar to this because it's what makes sense. Our sea surface temperatures, we're coming out of a La Nina shift in our atmospheric setup. I don't put a ton of stock in like this pegging exactly what we're going to have. Once the season's like last year, who had the strongest category 5, the earliest category 5 and barrel ripping through the Gulf in June? You can't predict that. Nobody had that. You just I don't know. That's my thought on it. So I might just flip a coin when we do our forecast.
The named storms thing becomes tough when you start to give it a historical context because like our ability to sense hurricanes and their strength like gets better every single year, and so if you compare the amount of named storms over a 5-year period 10 years ago like it's incredibly tough to do that because you can have a named storm for 12 hours and it's like that that would lower chance of that actually being noticed 10, 15 years ago. But this year, yeah, you notice it. And that's not to say like it's not important to name a storm, because like there's ships and stuff all over the world, and you gotta like I get it. I get why we're doing it, but like putting it in historical context is when things get really, really fuzzy,
Do you
for
know?
me.
So I'm glad you brought that up. And again, I'm not knocking anybody, so I don't want, not that,
I
there's
am.
big enough. I'm not trying to offend anybody. Last year, let me see if I can pull it up here. There was,
Umberto, I'm gonna Barry. Ooh, I like the very Americanized names here when we get
okay,
to these, so I don't have
Isai
to go to
is my all-time least favorite. Okay, that's no knock on somebody named that,
Isaiah.
but I had to say that so many times. Okay, so this is from the Weather Channel. It's a source. Here's my problem with last year. Do you see Nadine? Okay, this
Yeah,
got a name and was a system with a name for like 12 hours. Okay, same with Chris. So now in the history, in the database, you're going to have Chris, Sarah, and Raphael, all three of which had an incredibly short. Actually, I take that back. Raphael did not. But Sarah,
Chris is the lamest
Nadine,
one.
Chris. Chris was, oh, I
Chris is
can't believe
dumb.
they named it. It got a name right before. I mean, it was a depression and it got upgraded to a tropical storm like minutes before it made landfall. So to me, it's like, okay, it's not what's the, I know what the criteria is to become a depression, to become, a tropical storm, but now what's to keep you from naming something to skew it towards what you forecast? I mean, it's, I don't know. I don't think they should get a name like that when they're not going to be an impact for, and again, Chris dropped a lot of rain in a mountainous part of Mexico. But when you're talking about named storms, I don't think you're thinking of barely tropical storm Chris with 28-mile-an-hour winds and some rain. You're thinking of bigger storms, and it's tough because I think it skews your numbers.
I think this will be a good topic for the next episode.
Yeah.
Because I could go on further, but I don't. I think this is good content. The
Do you guys see
reason
your name
why
up here? Anybody see their name?
Olga, are you watching?
We got an Aunt Olga somewhere. I went to school with somebody named Sebastian. Let's see.
Barry, Aaron, everybody knows one of those.
Oh,
Wendy.
can you imagine the memes when Karen forms? Oh boy,
Jesus. Oh God. Prepare them now.
prepare them.
Get ready now.
Fernand, not Fernando. We had that a couple years ago. Chantal, Andrea. Is it?
Well,
Do you think is it Gabrielle or Gabriel?
I think it's probably like Gabrielle. Like like
Gabrielle, probably.
you got to get the pronunciation on the correct consonants here.
Umberto.
Pablo.
You just know Nestor's just gonna,
Nest.
wreak some havoc.
Make sure it's not Nestor.
See, don't do that, because then on the air.
Nestor.
Okay, question for you: have you ever pronounced one of these names wrong on the air?
Oh yeah, I'm sure once a year I probably mispronounce a name.
Did you ever have a bad one? Because I can tell you right now, the one I had, well, I'll never forget.
Let's do it. Go.
All right, I believe it was 2017. It was the J. Okay, I was
You're in
on the morning.
Dothan.
I built the tropical graphic to go wide, and it was tropical or potential tropical cyclone, 11 or 12, whatever. Well, it got a name like in the middle of the newscast, and I took a stab at it. It was Joaquin. Have y'all ever seen Joaquin spelled, written out?
There's like a J.
Oh yeah, there's
Okay.
J's in there.
Oh, it's like JAQU, something like that. Yeah.
I said Joaquin.
Jacques.
And I said it for like the next hour and a half on the show until somebody was like, "Hey, can y'all tell that weatherman that he's saying Joaquin and it's Joaquin like Phoenix, the actor?"
Jacqueline.
Ah. That was rough.
Oh man, I bet people in Alabama were like, you know what? It really might be. It really might be Jockway.
Head in the sand.
It really might be. It might be. That's good. No, I thankfully I have not said anything too stupid. I've said sorry. Let me back up. I've said stupid stuff on TV, but
Oh yeah.
the name thing, thankfully, because half the time people are like, "Oh yeah, the weatherman's supposed to know." I guess that's what it is. The reason why I have proposed this idea to make our own forecast is because you kind of got at it. It's like no one is going to use our forecast to plan. The only people the only like entities that are taken seriously with their hurricane forecast, like the National Weather Service, Colorado State, and then any of these other companies that like uh, big companies pay to do hurricane forecasting. I think hurricane forecasting has turned into like the college basketball bracket, like the NFL draft. Like there are so many people that likely don't have the level of expertise that Colorado State and NOAA have. They're just putting out hurricane forecasts. So it would be a slightly tongue-in-cheek hurricane forecast, but hey, if you get it right, you can be like, look at this.
Flex it.
Took one semester of tropical meteorology in my
We took it
hurricane
together.
forecast.
Studied together. Me and Wes stayed up. I mean, we got a couple all nighters for Dr. Dyer's class, but
That's right.
good parallel. I always think there's way too many people doing mock drafts. It drives me nuts. And
Yeah.
everybody seems to change altogether. It's like there's one guy in Mel Kiper who like changes something and everybody follows. And it's like, I mean, and I like the what you said too. Like, how are you? Is this helping you plan? Like when I say, hey, we're gonna have rain and storms after 4 o'clock. There's gonna be a lot of lightning. You're assuming I'm right. You're not gonna plan, an outdoor barbecue or have a baseball game or tournament scheduled in there. But when you say, hey, there's gonna be 13 to 16 named storms, are you gonna cancel that trip to Aruba? In August, if I don't know what the benefit of this is, except to look back from those entities' standpoints from research and say, okay, here was our atmospheric conditions entering the season. Here's what it yielded. How did we get from A to B? And is there a correlation to it happening before? What can we learn? So,
Yeah. So next week or the previous week or the following week, I think we should do a hurricane forecast.
at some
And
point,
I'm like trying to be somewhat sensitive with this because this is like life threatening situations here. But I wonder if like we pick the three names that have the best chance of producing like the strongest hurricane in terms of like um wind speed or something, right? Just for fun here. If you think that's too far, we don't have to do that. But
no, I like it.
all right.
I honestly, I think it'd be an interesting to hear from the people. Like our job is to serve the public, right? Like I've always seen this job as like a public service to people. Like you're giving them the forecast. Yes, we make a career out of it, but you're helping people plan. You are giving them information to use, on a day-to-day basis. And it's to help their lifestyle, to perhaps help prepare if it's severe weather. And so I don't know if it's just giving empty info, if it's, you could almost, like I said, there are certain times you can look at an atmospheric setup or sea surface temperatures and say, whoa, there's just no chance, or whoa, this is going to be the potential to be crazy. But every year seems to be like this. It's right in the middle of what's considered average. I mean, there's nothing definitive about saying we have a 60% chance of being above or 40% chance of being below. Like that's towing the line to me. It's not like really taking a stance. So it just, I don't know if it gives information to people or not.
Yeah, you're like leaning one way, and then you can also say, you know what? A lot of these storms may not even hit land. So it's like, yeah. All right, next episode we will get into this.
Okay, and I think we'll kick off. We'll talk a little bit because I did a story on this too. Is development regions and why we have them in June. So for folks who live along the coast, kind of talk about a little bit of the schooling. I love the explaining stuff. That's my favorite thing to do. Wes is really good with research, and we'll put it together and have something good for you.
Bet. Deal. I'm glad we could get back together to do one of these, Evan. It only took us a
Seriously,
month.
people know we're still friends.
We are. We are
All
still
right.
friends.
Good to see you, man. Thank you guys, and have a great week. We'll see you next time.